It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
All right, this next question is from Alyssa. Alyssa says, I will be getting stock options for work. Should I buy and sell it right away? Well, so for those of you that are not familiar, a stock option is just the right to purchase a stock at some future date, right? So I get an option that I want to buy stock X at some future date at some stated price. So a lot of times when you work for a publicly traded company, sometimes privately traded, but mostly it's publicly traded companies, they'll issue stock options where part of your incentive, part of your compensation comes in the form of these options. And what's beautiful is a lot of times they'll have a vesting schedule where you have to, you get them today, but you can't actually access them until you get a third next year and a third the year after and a third, so on and so forth. What's beautiful though is on the day that options vest, it's not taxable. So it's a little bit different than restricted stock option or units or grants where on the day that they vest, it becomes taxable. Options give you some flexibility. And most often when it's employer options like this, you usually have a 10-year window to exercise, right? So basically you get this thing and it becomes available to you and it has value. And I think what Alyssa is asking is, how should I approach this? Is this something where, okay, I got it, it's money in the hand, I should sell it, or should I hold it and does something happen with the options in the future? Or are there other considerations I should make? How do I navigate how to think about this thing that I have?
And you deal with this a lot more than I do, Bo, so you can probably correct anything. But the thing with stock options, in the past, there was non-qualified, there was qualified. Non-qualified, so just go slap it in your W-2. Mm-hmm. You don't get much control. Yep. It's going to happen. Qualified ones were the ones that gave you the option. You could buy the stock, they actually buy the shares at that lower price than market. And the planning opportunity was you could sit on it for 12 months, turn them into long-term holdings, and then get a much lower capital gains tax rate. And that was the planning opportunity that was there. And then, of course, not to get this confused with restricted stock units, those, like you said, typically roll right through your W-2 wages. You still have some planning opportunities with it, but pay attention to what's going on. But this is something, I want to go big picture. And because we can get into the nuances, but that's really a personalized, and we just don't know this person well enough. But I can talk big picture in the fact that you work for a company. So your human capital, the hours that you're awake, is involved in this company. You want to at some point figure out how you get your investment capital separated from the same company that you work at. Because there's a lot of risk if both your human capital, meaning your wages and your work time, is the same as your investment capital, because that's putting all of your eggs in one basket. So I always say the answer depends upon where you fall from a diversified portfolio, because we don't want, we talk about 5%, 10%, but you don't want too much of that company, no matter how good that company is, to occupy too much. And then you bring this point up all the time, Bo, is that it's crazy to let the tax tail wag the dog. If you have 7 figures of other options or restricted stock units sitting out there that you don't figure out how you can create, other diversified investment capital when you have so much still waiting in the wings tied into that same company.
Yeah, a lot of time with executives, we'll see it where not only do they have options that they're granted, but they also have RSUs, and they're likely participating in an employee stock purchase plan. And sometimes there are performance units that are sitting out there. You really have to look at your total exposure to the company, both vested and non-vested. Now, here's what we're not saying. It's okay to have some appropriate level of exposure to your company. Perhaps you work for a company that's doing something really exciting and they're working on a really great technology and there's new and innovative stuff coming out, and you look at your total picture and say, man, these options, I only got it granted this one time. So it's not like I'm on this incentive treadmill where every single year I'm replenishing and replacing those. It might make sense if you're really optimistic about what the company is doing and where it's going and new things that are happening. You may want to hold on to those options because, again, in most cases, you have about 10 years before you have to exercise those and before you have to actually recognize the value of those options. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but always check yourself. Look at how much of your total portfolio it represents, and then ask yourself, am I objective about the company that I work for? Because oftentimes when we work at an employer, we are convinced it's the absolute best, number one, hottest thing in the world, which that may or may not be the case, right? Obviously, you should feel that way, and you should feel like you can contribute and make that stock price go up. But you want to be realistic because you don't want to have, just like you said, all of your financial capital tied in with the same company where your human capital is tied into as well. And you need to figure out how all the incentive pieces, if you are that person that has RSUs and options and ESPP, how it all works together really efficiently from an allocation standpoint as well as a tax efficiency standpoint.
So if you're a person, look, it's easy if you're in a lower income tax situation, to make these decisions because you're not going to get beat up on the taxes, the capital gains, whatever it is. You're just naturally in a low tax bracket. But if you are a person that this is a substantial sum, don't make these decisions lightly. Yep. This is definitely one of those measure twice, cut once. Maybe you need a co-pilot to help you make these decisions because it's just so many different variables that are working there that you need to build a plan of how you actually address these things. Because that's the part I love doing the Money Guy Show. I love giving you guys the free advice so you can learn, apply, and grow, and hopefully build the abundance cycle that you become clients. But I worry that something that detailed, especially if somebody is getting into seven-figure status, be careful because there's a lot of variables and you just don't know what you don't know.
Well, and we've seen this both ways, Brian. We have clients presently at the firm who have become multimillionaires because of their incentives, because of their options. It was, did really well. And we have other clients at the firm who had that level of wealth and incentives on paper. And then something happened in the company, the thing changed, and it all went away. Yeah. So you just, again, understand what you're getting into and what you have access to. Now, that was a great question.